Welcome to another edition of Success Talk. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and as you know, we talk to some exciting people, people who have done incredible things, who face challenges, but who have made their breakthroughs to be, do, and have whatever they desire. And today, my special guest is an old friend, Reggie Davis, my corporate brother. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you, Herbert? It's always good to see you, and it's certainly good to be here with you as well.
Well, Reggie, I always admired you and what was that, Tim
Tim
Dennis,
Dennis. That's
because
right.
you guys had real jobs working with real companies.
Yes, we did, and we
Yeah,
worked a lot.
yes, and you did well. You guys are an example of what I guess that whole era when they began to open up the jobs and the management and positions to people of color, man, you guys stepped right up and I think did a excellent job representing.
Well, we were fortunate. We certainly followed the footsteps of many pioneers and some of
Mhm.
my mentors, particularly in the early 60s or late 60s and going into the 70s. They opened the doors for us. And fortunately, they put one foot in the door, kept it cracked, and we walked through it. So, and then we took advantage of it. And our whole goal was to make sure we didn't disappoint them and make
Yes.
sure that we paid it forward and helped other people like ourselves.
Well, Reggie, that's an interesting point now. Do you think that's still going on in corporate America as far as like people of color moving up the ranks?
It is. As a matter of fact, it's funny you should say that. So I sit on the board of an organization called National Sales Network, and it's an African American organization of professional salespeople and managers and leaders throughout the country. We've got about 24 chapters in the country and one in London, and primarily focused on development of sales professional. So our primary goal is to have open up opportunities to sales professional people, and even in college. So as college students are coming into their profession, looking at sales, because most of the times many people don't look at sales as a profession. And
Mm,
sales, as you know, because everything is sales, salespeople are some of the most highly paid people in the world. You can start out in your, in the high five digits, and then quickly get into six digits, and within about 4 or 5 years. So yes, to answer your question, that is still going on, and it's needed. And what really happened is, in this now, with the Me Too movement and what's going on with women, Black women are making significant progress in corporate America. So if you begin to look at Black leadership,
mhm,
you'll see many Black women. And one example from Xerox is Ursula Burns, who wound up becoming the CEO
mhm.
at Xerox, and sits on many boards, to include American Express, where I formerly worked at both those companies. So you do see that still going on. It's not as publicized, maybe as much, and it depends on the circle that you're in. But you do see that there's a lot going on in that
Mhm.
area.
That man, I'm so glad you said that. I think people need to know that. As you said, it's not publicized. And many times, when I speak at different colleges, I don't get the sense of many of the students I talk to that they see sales as a viable career. Do you have any comments on young people coming into the career, young people of color coming into sales?
Absolutely. I
Uh-huh.
think that, to your point, when you think about the majors that you go into, right, what you major in, whether it's chemistry or business or marketing, most young people think about they want to go into career and they've got to go into marketing. Well, it's hard to get into marketing to start off with. You get very low level jobs, or even, try to go into management. You really, for the most part, going into sales is an opportunity for you to learn the entire organization, because to sell anything, you've got to understand the product, you got to understand the company, and you're the face of that company to the
Mm-hmm.
public, to their clients. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of young people don't really understand the opportunities there are for sales. And oh, by the way, you can major in anything and go into sales. So
Yeah.
that's the nice thing.
Yeah.
And particularly if you think about it with technology today, for example, you take a young woman or a young man majoring in engineering, somebody like yourself, for example,
Hmm.
you give them some sales training, they could become some of the highest paid technology salespeople in the world, and they
Yeah.
make a lot of money. So that
Yeah.
opportunity is there. And, you see it more. We do a lot. Our organization is based out of Atlanta. So there's where a lot of historically Black colleges are. So we do a lot of recruitment out of the schools in Atlanta, for example, the Clark and the Spelman, and the likes,
Wow.
and FAM.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so we do a good job.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good to know, and that's good. That's a good piece, I think. So we have a lot of an interesting group of young people who listen, and I'm glad that we you really shared that because they need to look at that. Now, now, Reggie, what's a little about your background? Where'd you grow up? What kind of family life you had? Just a little
Wow.
bit. How Reggie Davis started out in the world in the game of life.
Well, that is interesting. Um, I think that I have been truly blessed. Where God placed my seed, I would not ever want Him to change that in life. We were just talking about the fact that I lost my mom 2 years ago, and my mom was a tremendous, tremendous Black woman who supported her family as a single mom. Now, I
Mm,
will say that my dad was in my life up until they were married up until I was 6 years old, and then they separated and eventually got divorced. But my mom never denied him access, unlike many, I'll say, people and some women today will use their kids as a leverage, not to allow the man to see their kids. My mom never did that. She always wanted to give me access to my dad. But fortunately, my mom was one of nine, and she had five brothers who were all my uncles. And
mm,
so I had significant role models, one of which you know very well, John
mm.
Battle,
Yeah.
who's my uncle. And so his four other brothers were like my early mentors from the day I showed up in this world. And then she had two sisters who were well educated. So I come from a family who believed in education. Southern folks, hard work, grew up in Wilson, North Carolina. I grew up in pretty much in Newark, New Jersey, East Orange, New Jersey, and went to public school through eighth grade.
Mhm.
Then a funny thing happened. I had a teacher who encouraged me to go out and take tests to go to Catholic school. At that time, you had to take tests to get into Catholic school. And my aunt, who was a teacher at the time, said, I don't want you to go to the public high school. I think you're smart enough to be able to get into, one of these Catholic schools. So I actually saved my money. It was $50 a application. My mom didn't know anything about it.
Mm,
Uh, took the a- uh, took the entrance exams, passed them, got into the one I wanted. At that time was Seton Hall Prep, right on the campus of Seton Hall University. And when my mother found out that I had gotten in, it was because a letter came to the house saying, "Congratulations. We look forward to you and your son coming up to Seton Hall, and please bring a check for $6,000." And she looked at me to say, "What
what?
is going on? Like, what are you doing?"
Uh-huh.
However, she was like, "Obviously, you were determined, and this is something that you really wanted to do." And she's a single mom, and that was a lot of money back in 1973.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm gonna make this happen," and so she did. And
Wow.
so I went to Seton Hall Prep for 2 years, and my sister then was entering college, so she couldn't afford it as a single mom. So I came out and went to a public high school, Columbia High School in South Orange, Maplewood. And I always told my mom I was going to get a scholarship to go to college.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know how. I thought I was a basketball player, so I thought it was going to be in basketball. But God didn't give me the inches to play ball, at least at that level. So, but I wound up running track. So my last 2 years in high school, I ran track and got a track scholarship to Rutgers University. And there, I had a successful career as a track athlete, as a student athlete. but also I majored in human ecology with an emphasis in epidemiology, chemistry, and nutrition.
Wow.
So I wanted to be a doctor, but fate would have it a little bit different. During the summer of my senior year, I started working at Sears and in their home appliance division, and started selling microwaves and home goods, and did very well at it.
Uh-huh.
And so I got the sales bug, and as it turned out, I happened to sell a regional manager. He was selling one house and buying another, and so all of his products are going to his both new houses.
Uh-huh.
And he offered me an opportunity to get into sales at U.S. Lines, where I worked with Tim Dennis. Is where I worked with Tim Dennis at U.S. Lines,
Wow.
and had a successful career there. They wound up going bankrupt and then just passed forward. Had a couple of different sales jobs, most notably at Xerox. Worked there for 7.5 years. And from Xerox, opened up my own Xerox dealership and agency in New York City, right a block around the corner from Madison Square Garden.
Uh-huh.
A business partner and I ran that for 11 and a half years, did about $52 million in business. And then from there, decided I was going to go back into corporate. And still, though I had my own company, it was still connected to Xerox. So we're still kind of corporate. As you say,
Uh-huh.
I am a corporate kind of guy. And
Yeah.
then started working at American Express and was director of account development for a team that managed the team from really northern New Jersey up to the Canadian border, and had a
Wow.
$2 billion budget
Is
that
that now
we had.
that's billion with a B?
Billion with a B. That was my budget.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
And so it was quite a task and a chore, but it was extremely enjoyable, and we achieved it every year.
Uh-huh.
So that was wonderful. And then left American Express to take care of my sister and my mom.
Uh-huh.
And my sister had a heart attack while I was at American Express. At 56 years old, she passed.
Wow. Yeah.
And then that triggered my mom's dementia. And so, in taking care of my sister, and upon her passing, I wound up continuing to take care of my mom.
Wow.
And while I was doing that, I had to earn an income. So I started, and we met each other through multi-level marketing,
Yes.
and got involved with a multi-level marketing organization in travel because that's where I was at American Express,
Uh-huh.
and it just fit what I was doing, and that's what I'm currently doing today.
Wow. Now, did you get a chance to work with what was the brother who was the CEO of American Express?
Ken Chenault,
Ken Chenault.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Ken Chenault was the reason why I went to American Express. Funny thing is that when I was at Xerox, American Express was one of my accounts. In
Uh-huh.
fact, yeah, I think I may have had 7 or 8 accounts, American Express being the main account. And I had sold into American Express. And one day I'm walking the halls, as we had to as reps selling to our accounts, and I was on the floor where Ken Chenault's office was, which nobody was really allowed because that was an executive floor. And I
Uh-huh.
walked past his conference room, and he was there eating lunch. When I walked past, he yelled out, he goes, "Who's that?" Because he didn't know who I was, and he stopped
Right.
me. I
Yeah.
went back in, introduced myself, and he said, "Tell Barry I said hello." Well, Barry Rand was the number two leader at Xerox, who was a brother, and
Wow.
they were friends.
Uh-huh.
And so he was like, "Okay, I'm going to make sure that I take care of you,
Uh-huh.
but make sure the next time you come through, bring Barry with you." And I did, by the
Uh-huh.
way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yes, I
Wow.
did work, and then when I left, when I was looking to leave Xerox, though I started my own dealership and worked there for 16 years,
Uh-huh.
American Express pursued me because they knew the relationship I had. I had done very well at American Express. So when I sold my dealership, American Express was almost a natural fit for me
Wow.
to go there.
Wow.
So things kind of worked the way they were supposed to, I
Yeah.
guess.
Now, Reggie, you just hit a lot of nuggets there. You know, people ask questions, very often when you meet somebody, especially in the corporate, in the business arena, you can ask certain questions to find out who a person really is. So now, if you had not known Barry,
Right, right.
okay, it would have been a real different outcome. And if you had not had a good relationship with Barry, you know,
Correct.
yeah, see,
Correct.
and when I speak to some of the younger people, I said, business as life is a 24-hour game, and
Yes.
it's not just who you know, but it's who knows you and how.
You said a mouthful there. There's
Yeah.
no question about that. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, it's funny you say that. Barry knew me in a very well light. How I met Barry one on one was because at Xerox we had to do product demonstrations. So we've had,
Uh-huh.
of course, Xerox, we've got big copying machines, and
Yeah.
so we had to learn the script to sell these machines. And we had a corporate wide competition throughout the country on demoing the newest machines that had come out. Well, I had won the region, Demorama, we called it.
Uh-huh.
And when you win the region, the regional winners would go up to headquarters to do the product demonstration, excuse me, for our leadership. And so when I did those product demonstrations, I did not win,
Hmm.
but I came in. I think I came in second or third throughout the country. So I would say I was in the top three. And as a result, one of the demonstrations I did was for Barry Rand. And Barry at that point was very good at pulling people aside, particularly brothers, and say,
Hmm.
"Hey, you know what? I like what you're doing. This is great. Keep in touch." And so
Hmm.
I did. And I would say that's one lesson I've learned and I share with young people, particularly when they, now that I'm older and in position to kind of give back, people say, well, can I have your number? And, can I talk to you and follow up? I said, okay, I have one condition if I give you my number, that you use it. Because most of the time, people in positions like a Ken Chenault, like a Barry Rand, like yourself, people will ask for your number. And you're like, okay, no problem at all. However, most of the time, I think so many young people say, you know what, Herb is too busy. If I call him, he doesn't have time for me. Reggie's too busy,
Hmm.
or I could have said Barry was too busy, or
Hmm.
Ken
Hmm.
Chenault. I actually called Barry and followed up, and he was excited to have a conversation with me, inviting me back up to the corporate office, and and we got a chance to talk, and he wanted to understand what my career goals and objectives were,
Hmm.
and really helped to mentor me to the next level. So one of the things I would tell, if you meet someone who you see as a mentor, you see as a someone who can help you, give you some insight to get to the next level, if you get their information, call them, contact them, follow up with them, but also have a purpose. That's not, hey, just don't say, hey, Reggie, or her, hey, Herb, it's good to see you. Thank you for me. No,
Yeah.
my purpose is, I want to be a better salesperson. I want to be a better entrepreneur. I want to be better. And these are the things that I'm looking for. And oftentimes what happens is, number one, that person will have great advice for you, but also they will get insight from you
Hmm.
in terms of understanding how your generation thinks, how someone in your position may think. Because sometimes, you can lose touch with just
Mm.
getting started. Some
Wow.
of the best things I've ever done, particularly as a leader, is to train or to go out with somebody new in my organization. And when I go out with somebody new, it's sometimes you forget the fundamentals. I mean, you're doing them, but
Uh-huh.
when you have to go through them step by step with someone and you better understand them, it really
Uh-huh.
has an impact and it helps you. So, as much as I'm trying to give to someone who's looking for me to mentor them, I get as much from a mentee from their perspective. They've got a new perspective, they see it through totally different eyes. And I
Mm.
think that that's something that many of our young people don't really value as much. Value themselves because you can bring a perspective that somebody my age may not have.
Wow. Now, I tell you, Reggie, you dropped a lot of dropped the bombs and pearls and everything else. I find the same thing. I always have business cards. I've always had I go back to the old days when they called it a calling card.
Right, right,
That was,
right, right. Yes.
when I was starting out in the music industry and I wanted to see people who didn't know me from Hula Hula, I had these red it was like a plastic calling card. You couldn't write on it, but it had
Ah,
my name and all my contact information. And so whenever I went to see somebody I didn't know, I would say,
mm-hmm.
"Well, let me leave my card. Just let him know that Herb Harris was here, and love to follow up, talk with him." And they always did it. I find that most of the people I give a card to never ever call, never call
Yes,
back. And so for a young person, that's a part of that A game thinking,
that's right.
that number one, to live a life of example. When I counsel young folks, that one of the number one issues they often raise is that's not my job, number one. And two, and number two, you know, I don't get paid to do that. You know,
Hmm.
I've been here almost a month and I haven't gotten a raise yet. You know? And so what you were saying, a couple of things. Number one, that when you're in a space with somebody who can help you, number one, you got to have a idea where you want to go.
That's right.
If you don't have a destination in mind, was it the Alice in Wonderland? If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Take you there. Right. That's right. That's exactly right.
and, and so when you have an intention, to our young
Yes.
people,
Being
about
intentional.
being intentional about what it is, if you're on the job, what are your expectations of it, where do you want to go? If all you're looking for is a paycheck, you could probably quit now and save everybody the trouble. Okay.
That's right. That's exactly right, Herb.
Yeah. And to
Well
have
stated.
to have that vision of what you would like to have it be in that position, how it can help you. And then when you meet somebody who can help you, make sure that they remember you and remember you fondly. And
Absolutely.
as you say, when they say coming in, have something to say.
Oh, no question about it.
Yeah.
Herb, I'll take it to another step.
Hmm.
One of the things that I used to do when I started my Xerox sales agency, we really called on new businesses.
Hmm.
So that was people who they knew the name Xerox. So that was easy to go into a corporation and say, hey, Xerox, you use our products, but they didn't have a business relationship with us. And so oftentimes it would be tough to knock on doors in New York City because you were one of 1,000 salespeople calling on these businesses.
Hmm.
And you may get in, you may not get in. So what I would encourage many of my salespeople to do is take three opportunities to communicate with the organization that you don't know, particularly if you're trying to get to the leader in the organization, the CEO, the owner of the company. And so, what I would ask them to do is number one, always look for articles in the newspaper or any media information that they had on the company. So, if you were running the company and there was something on about your company, I would say pull the article, send it to Herbert Harris and say, Mr. Harris, I see that, they wrote an article on you. You just recently acquired a new business. You just started a new product. Congratulations. Great. Now, Herb doesn't know Reggie from a paint a can. I mean,
Hmm.
a can of paint, right? A can of paint, right?
Uh-huh.
And so you might put that aside. The
Uh-huh.
next time you see something, uh, you send that note in and say, Herb, I see you just got a promotion. Congratulations. I'm sure you're going to lead the organization well. I'd love to speak to you when you have an opportunity. Send that to Herbert. Herbert is like, I don't, but that name looked familiar, right?
Uh-huh.
You do it a third time. The third time, I will almost guarantee you that that person will call you or reach out to you and say, who the heck are you?
Wow.
And that happened to me with Earl Graves at Black Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and here's the ironic part. It turns out you never know who's connected to who. Earl Graves, Ken Chenault, and Barry Rand, my mentor at Xerox, were all connected.
Yeah.
So when I finally reached out to Earl Graves, we had not done business with Black Enterprise, and
Hmm.
they didn't want to do business with Xerox. But Earl said, "This young man, I want to meet him." He sent me three notes. I
Hmm.
don't know who he is. I want to meet him. I got in there. We wound up doing business with Black Enterprise.
Wow.
So that is just one of the strategies that you can use. And today, with social media, with LinkedIn, with all this information that's available, you can easily contact people and gain access in a very positive and a productive way. But
Wow.
you said one thing, with intention, and that
Mm-hmm.
is really important. You have to be intentional. So be careful because they may answer you and they
Mm-hmm.
may say, "Let's have a meeting." Be prepared.
Be prepared. And you know something, Reggie? You never know who's watching you.
This is true.
You never know who's watching you. And so to conduct yourself always in a way of confidence, competence. So they say, well, I don't know who that brother is, but he is somebody. They said
Absolutely.
an old lady in the church one day, they said that a young man came in and, he sat over there in the corner and the old lady, they said, well, who's that? She said, I don't know what somebody he is, but I know he is somebody.
For
Wow.
sure.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'm still of the old school. One of my teachers used to the power of thank you notes. You know,
Well, that's always good.
yeah,
Now here's the other thing.
uh-huh.
Today, that
Yeah,
is more powerful than anybody could imagine because it's so infrequent that someone gets a letter, a
uh-huh.
card, or something handwritten. So here's something that I do. I'm now currently interviewing for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
After I interview for a job, send emails out, particularly when I'm at the final stages. I don't do it throughout the entire process, but with the
Mm-hmm.
final stages, I will send a handwritten thank you note to the interviewer. And usually
Mm-hmm.
they're at VPs, and they almost invariably, even if they don't give me the job, they will remember you
Remember you. Yes.
because that is something that sets you apart from anybody else because it's
Yes.
so infrequent. Everybody is digital.
Yes.
So and that's fine. But if you want to set yourself apart, you've got to do things that are different than what everybody else is doing.
Wow. Wow. And that power of LinkedIn, a friend of mine was having trouble getting a mortgage, one of these internet mortgage companies, I mean, a well known company. And he said, "Man, I need a lawyer." I'm like, well, what do you need? Well, I put in my application. Nobody calls me back, and this, that, and the other. And I said, well, why don't you check him out on LinkedIn? So sure
Hmm.
enough, went to LinkedIn. There was a message, contact information. He contacted the CEO of the company and told him, nobody got back to me. I didn't. Let me tell you, within 2 days,
Yeah.
they, they, they were helping him package his own mortgage. Like look, we got the money. It's here. You just got to clean up this and clean up that. But we're gonna do this deal.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
those are some great tips, man. Well, do you have any brothers and sisters, Reggie?
Well, I told you I just had just my sister.
Uh-huh.
So and then she's the one that I started caregiving and she
Right.
passed. So she was
Right.
18 months older than me.
Oh, okay.
So it
All
was just
right.
the two of us.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in moving through this corporate arena, were there any? What would you say was the main two obstacles that you had to overcome to get to the next level? Whatever as you move up the ladder to build your business, what would you say the two main obstacles that you had to overcome, and how you overcame them?
Well, okay. Interesting.
Mhm.
So one I would say was being an educated black man was the first obstacle. And why
Mm,
I say that is because white corporate America sees us very different. Now, between us, I think I communicate in a very educated, I speak the King's English, very, my communication skills, I believe, are reasonably good. However, white corporate America sees you, and when you communicate effectively, when you present yourself effectively, they see you a little bit differently. And I would say I really learned this. It hit home when I went out and I had a district manager travel with me for a day in my territory when I was at Xerox. And he had heard some good things about me, and he wanted to travel and see how Reggie was doing because I was being considered for moving to the next level. When we came back, the feedback he gave the other managers was, he's a good communicator. He's very informed, but he's very slick. Now, slick
mm-hmm.
Well, that's a code word for it. He communicates in an urban way as a black man versus now, if I was a white boy, he would have said, he's very communicative. They understood him, but he was slick. So he looked at my savviness and categorized it in a way that was not going to be quite as acceptable, you
Mm.
know, as maybe some of my white colleagues, because he would have never categorized them as
Mm-hmm.
being slick, because that's
Mm-hmm.
really derogatory to some good degree. You
Mm-hmm.
think of somebody who's slick, you think they're kind of like underhanded, they're sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, a positive communication. So I shared with him, I said, that communication wasn't positive. He goes, well, I meant it in a positive way. I said, well, did you describe anybody else that way? He goes, no.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the real first time that I got a look to see that, ooh, okay, I really have to understand their perception, and I've got to really make sure that I really paint my own narrative. So
Mm-hmm.
that was eye opening for me, and quite frankly, I will tell you, I wasn't the most on time person.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, in corporate America, that's really important. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is something that I really had to get a handle on. And that really helped to accelerate my rise within
Mm-hmm.
corporate America because people got to know that you respect time.
Mm-hmm.
And respecting time shows that you respect the process, you respect the organization, you respect the people that you're meeting with. And so timeliness is so important. And so I am so much better. I'm not perfect, but I can tell you that that was significant. And so, but perception is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perception is their
Mm-hmm.
reality. So
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
to make sure that I changed their reality. And so, coming up in East Orange, New Jersey, predominantly black city, I'm used to communicating with my brothers and sisters. So while you go, in corporate, you're trying to communicate in a very precise, appropriate manner, if you will. But when you come
Mm-hmm.
home, you got to get from the train
Mm-hmm.
station back home,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you got to be able to come through the neighborhood and people know that you haven't sold out, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
And so you got to be able to communicate in that way. So one of my better managers, leaders told me, goes, Reggie, I see you as an Ivy League street fighter, meaning
Uh-huh.
that you are smart enough to communicate in the corporate boardroom, but
Uh-huh.
you also know how to handle yourself on the street. And you can mix those, but you got to make sure your communication strategy is appropriate for the environment in which you're in.
Wow. Yeah, that's really that's some profound stuff, Reggie. I remember working with a company and the the person that I was reporting to interpreted confidence as arrogance.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I was kind of looking at an evaluation once. It's been a long time since I've had a job. I don't even know if they do that anymore. But I
They
was,
do.
and the comment was like, can be arrogant, has a certain air, but an effective communicator, and all that. But that was in there. And I was shocked. I never thought of myself as arrogant. And when we talked about it, I was asking him, how do you determine that? What are your metrics to determine that I'm arrogant? And all he could say was, you always act like you know what you're doing. That was about it.
Like that's a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and that's arrogance. But I think in his mindset, maybe there was probably underlying thoughts there that maybe I did not
Absolutely.
have the capacity. There was a time when you didn't have, for example, black quarterbacks in football,
Right. Right.
and there was a
That's right. That's right.
real mindset that said a black man didn't have the thought
The
power,
capacity.
the
That's right.
capacity to manage a football team on the field to execute a game plan. You
Right.
know, but thank goodness there's always somebody that says, there's a Branch Rickey or somebody he
That's right.
says, this guy's just talented. Jackie Robinson, he could hit, run, steal. He's just talented, and he's going to be and I think he's going to be an asset to the game.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
and I think that what you figured out in that corporate world is as long as you're an asset to the corporation, you're dealing with a good hand.
Well, and that's key. You know
Mhm,
what? You're absolutely right because the bottom line, corporations look at, you know what, are you generating revenue and are you generating profitable revenue? And
mhm,
if that is being achieved, then they will make allowances, right?
mhm,
And so that's exactly right. So I always, and I didn't even mention this during my introduction, but in the 7 years that I was at Xerox, I won 5 President's Club. And so that what that really means is President's Club is the top 12% of the salespeople in the corporate and our corporation throughout the world. We
mhm,
earn a trip, a fully paid trip every year, and you are in the top. And in probably my 3rd year at Xerox, I was the number 12 representative in the country for
mhm,
Xerox.
mhm,
So so as a result, that provided table stakes for me to be able to have a seat at the table and also to have a voice to hear, to be heard. So
mhm,
performance is table stakes to enter into the arena, to become a
mhm.
gladiator,
Yeah.
to really fight, if you
Mhm,
will. And
mhm,
so that I would say that so we've got to have performance behind us, we've got to have learning behind us, we've got to have experiences behind us that now that when we step forward, we can say, here we've got all of the necessary criteria met.
mhm,
Now let's have a conversation. So they
mhm.
will learn and they will listen, but they are listening, they're really looking at all the things that you bring to the table because sometimes they can't get beyond your black face. They can't
Right.
sometimes they can't get beyond what their perception is. And oh, by the way, it's really comes down to exposure because a lot of people, and whether it's you or I or somebody white or Chinese, if you've never been exposed to an intelligent engineer that graduated from Columbia University that has all the certainly capabilities that you have, Herb, you would never think that somebody like you exists if you've never seen that, right?
Yes.
And a
Yes.
black man.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
they were like, well, what are you talking about? I've
Yeah.
never, who is that? Does that person exist? Yeah, he's
Yeah.
sitting right here in front of you.
Yeah.
So, so I think that oftentimes people from different areas in their walks of life, they go back to their communities. And as much as people think that we're integrated today, we all go back to our quote unquote segregated communities, segregated churches, and we don't have exposure. And so when you walk, you have to walk with that in mind. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way that people are. And so
Yeah.
you have to understand you want to expose them. So that's why, going back to something you said earlier, you've
Mhm,
always got to be on your A game. You've got to present yourself in a way
mhm,
that is positive, that's effective, and that's compassionate about whoever you're communicating with so you can understand where they're coming from and
mhm.
communicate to them where they are. It
Wow.
helps a lot.
Absolutely. Man, I tell you, these are some pearls, corporate pearls, life pearls, really, life pearls.
Right.
Uh-huh. Now, I guess just a couple more questions. What do you see as your greatest victory? You look back over a life of accomplishments. You've won the contest. You've clearly made money. Thank goodness you were in a position to be able to take care of your mom and your sister and to do those kind of things. I know when my aunt got really sick, after her brother died. And, the old South, when you had the school teachers that didn't get married, and even
Right.
my uncle didn't get married until he was like in his mid 40s. I was his best man. Okay. So, so they grew up together. And when he passed, she had struggled with it. And I came home, and it's very interesting how you never know. I had was going to buy a car, and a fella saw me, and he saw my aunt. She'd ridden with me, and he said, "It's almost like Reggie, like he was like, take any car you want, you know, we'll send you the paperwork. I know you're in a hurry."
Wow. Wow.
And I was just amazed. And so the deal went so smoothly that I said, well, you know, what was it that, made you? Because I'd been to another dealer and had a completely different experience.
Mm,
And I really
mm.
wanted that car, but I was not going to be treated a certain kind of way.
Wow.
And so I asked the guy, I said, well, what was it that, made you really, I mean, are you just a master sailor? He said, well, no. He said, I've seen how you take care of your aunt.
Wow.
He
There
said,
you go.
yeah. He said,
There you
I
go.
saw how you take care of your aunt, and I know that anybody that has that type of love and compassion is a good person. And believe me, you'll pay your bills, you won't have any problem. And literally, he said, finally, he said, look, he said, let me do the application. How much do you want to pay down? I still wasn't yet sold on the car. I said, well, I like the car, you know what I'm saying? He said, well, look, just give me $20 so I can put something down and be done with it. And the
Wow.
next day, the car was ready for me.
Wow.
She called me. She said, Herbert, she said, the guy called and he said, your car's ready. Go pick it up. But it was,
Wow.
yeah, but it was all, he saw how I had taken care of her. So how you conduct yourself and how the world sees you is like critical. So
It
what what
really is.
what do you think is your greatest victory, Reggie?
Well, Herbert, wow. There, there's a lot. I've been blessed. I have been blessed. Certainly, I could say, running a Xerox dealership and agency for 11 and a half years successfully was a great victory. Leading an organization at American Express, $2 billion organization, was a great victory. But you know what? You probably hit the nail on the head for me, quite honestly, as I look back at it now. My greatest victory was being born to Alice Ann Davis, and who was my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And she instilled in me very fundamental characteristics:
Wow.
hard work, do what is expected, but do more than what is expected.
Wow.
Excellence
Yeah.
is what is expected,
Mm-hmm.
and then treat people fairly and be kind. And something she always said, and you'll probably, this will kind of hit home with you, is when you walk out that door, always remember your last name.
Mm.
And that was so, because that meant you were Alice Davis's child and you represented her when you went out in the street. And that meant that you carried that through with you everywhere you went. So that understanding and that philosophy carried me through everything that I did. So whether it was running track, and I had some great victories there, whether it was, getting into college was, wow, some people say, hey, you know what? Yeah, it sounds like you on the right trajectory, but that was a great victory for me to
Yes.
get into college and get a college scholarship,
Mm.
and to do some of the things that I did. I competed in the 1980 Olympic trials. So, that there are a number. I don't know what was greatest because I learned so many lessons from each and every one
And
of
one.
those.
Wow.
And quite frankly, from some of your biggest challenges, you learn possibly even more because we tend to evaluate our losses more than we evaluate our wins.
Yes.
And so you look at your wins and say, I was great, but it was really the losses that gave me that was the food, that was the fuel that gave me the ability to achieve the achievements that I have been able to make.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it
powerful. That's powerful.
it's
The
tough.
lessons are sometimes so much greater than the accomplishment. The lessons
Oh,
that,
that's
ooh,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. The journey
The
is
journey.
greater than getting to the destination, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
all the journeys that I've taken have led me to where I am, right?
yes.
And you know what? As I still consider myself relatively young, and I've got
Uh-huh.
hopefully many more years ahead of me to
Yes,
journey and to realize some great successes.
yeah.
And one of the things I would say that I probably didn't do as good of a job at in coming through was taking advantage of mentors,
Mm,
because I did not really understand what a mentor was as a young man.
mm,
And honestly, coming through, having five uncles at home who kicked my butt,
mm,
making sure I did what I needed to do. But I thought I was learning from them, so I thought I knew everything, right? And when you
mm.
think you know everything, that doesn't leave any room or opportunity for understanding and for additional learning and
Yes,
growth.
yes.
And so I think that had I um, had I understood better, I would have taken full advantage of some of the mentors that showed up because I was
Mm-hmm,
ready when they showed up. I just
mm-hmm.
wasn't I didn't think I needed a mentor. I thought I could figure it out. At 20
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
old, you think I got all this going on. I'm just
Yeah.
coming off the
Yeah.
track. I'm doing my thing. Then I go
Mm,
into corporate America, having great success, making good money. You
yeah.
can't tell me anything,
Yeah.
and continue to go on. And what I realized is that mentors help to keep you grounded. They help to give you a real perspective, one that you may not be looking at. It's always having a different set of eyes gives
Mm,
you a whole nother perspective.
perspective. Wow.
And that's so important. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so important. And they kind of bring you back to reality. So
Yeah.
even in leadership position, I am the currently the chairperson of Essex County College Foundation, where we raise funds.
Uh-huh.
It's a community college in Newark. We raise funds for students to go to school and help to get them through their 2 years at Essex County College. And I have a mentor, Emerson Fullwood, who is he was on the board of A&T, North Carolina A&T, holds a
Uh-huh.
golf event every year to raise funds for
Uh-huh.
them. And he shared with me, I was having some challenges when I first got into the position. He says, Reggie, hold on. He said, bring your emotion down, open up your perspective. He said,
Uh-huh.
because you're going to get more understand where people are coming from better if you pull back a little bit more and not act like you know everything and act like you need to know everything. So if you
Mm.
want to know more, and the way you do that is listen and
Yeah.
ask questions. And,
Wow.
and and that really, really helped to kind of ratchet down my enthusiasm, because I'm naturally an enthusiastic person
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
very positive.
Yes.
And so, in order to kind of really not overwhelm someone with my personality to some degree, I got to pull
Yeah.
it back and just kind of say, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
What do I really want to get from this person? What do I want to understand?
Yes.
And by listening and being quiet, you learn a lot more.
Wow. Now you really answered. You anticipated. You didn't know what my next question was, but my next question was, what advice would you give your younger self? When you you answered that completely, man. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that
yeah.
definitely, and even even today, it's
Uh,
I've got people like you around me,
uh,
to be able to take advantage of some of the life experiences that you've had. And in as much as you think, again, I've had some great life experiences and I've done some things that people say, oh, you've been successful. Well, you know what? Somebody could have done the same thing, but they didn't do it in the same way. And they
yes.
had a different exposure. So understanding that it could be that one little thing that I learned that helps me go to the next level,
Yes.
that helps me to avoid that pothole,
Yes.
right? That you stepped in. You're like,
Yeah.
don't make that left turn,
Yeah.
make a right
Yeah.
turn,
Yes.
right?
See, definitely don't turn left, brother. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, Reggie, I think back and sometimes I ask, you are now at that point, like you say, you have a number of years ahead of you, etc. So what would your 85, your 90-year-old self, what would your 90-year-old self say to you about where you are right now?
Wow. Well, I think my 90-year-old self would say, you've not done bad.
Mm,
You've had the opportunity maybe to do better, listen more, understand more,
mm,
and act faster.
ooh, yes.
And in fact, I think that's what my 90-year-old self would say. And believe in yourself more. Because I think self belief, while believe it or not, most people look at me and say, oh, he's got great confidence and, you've
Yes.
achieved a lot. So why do you have any issues with self belief?
Uh-huh.
Well, it depends on the arena you're in. It depends
Mm,
on what your goals are. It depends on where you believe your potential, your fullest potential is. And so I think that as you do something that you've never done before, you certainly don't have the same level of confidence that you have with doing something that you've done before. But the only
mm,
way that you grow and expand is to do the thing that you've never done before, right?
wow.
And that adds more on to your life experiences, because life is a sum total of our experiences, right? And
Yes.
so the more experience you have, the more you live.
Hmm.
And certainly, while I have traveled a lot, I would try. My 90-year-old self would be travel more, experience the world, because when you experience the world in other cultures, other religions, other races, you really get a much fuller perspective and realize, you know, you ain't so bad. You ain't so
Mm,
bad.
wow, wow. Reggie, those are some powerful words, brother. I tell you, this has been an incredible interview. Let's see. Well, two things. Now, you see, I have our book in the background, and you got the book in the early days, man.
Yes, I got probably the first book,
Yeah, yeah.
the
One of the
first
early
edition.
ones. Yes, yes. And any thoughts about the book? You know?
Well, I mean, I think that woven throughout this conversation,
Hmm.
you can see many of the 12 universal laws that have played significant roles that are we've woven throughout kind of how I've lived my life, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that the book is it does it captures in a very understandable way of things that are immutable
Mm, mm,
that
yes.
that really, if practiced on a regular basis,
Hmm.
with repetition, with compassion, with
Hmm.
understanding, um, and with a desire to improve and get better,
Mm,
right? To make
yes.
progress, then you can pretty much achieve anything you want.
Wow. Yeah.
Period.
Yes. Wow.
So
Yeah. Well, man, I thank you, Reggie. This has been really. I think we're going to have a lot of young people, corporate people, young people who are looking to get into the market. There's some nuggets in here that, it's and never take flying lessons from a teacher who's never flown the plane. you
this
know,
is true. This is true,
you
Herb.
know, and to meet, and that's why I say I take my hat off to I call it the corporate brothers, because you all were able to move in an arena that, number one, so many of our young people don't even know is possible. You know,
Right.
I, I,
True.
I used to teach with a group of young people, one of these um, skills development program, was a youth bill to help prepare young people for the construction trades, and
Okay.
I would give a list of who made more money, and
Wow.
I had a list, and I had Shaquille O'Neal, Ken Chenault.
Oh.
and not and not a single kid knew who Ken Chenault
Attention out.
was. They knew about American Express. They all knew about the black card because of the rappers and all that.
Right. Right.
But they had no idea that a black man was the CEO.
Right.
And I
Absolutely.
and there was a press release. I think he'd just gotten a salary increase to like 40 million a year or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And the 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 commentary from the young folks was, "Oh snap! He makes he makes more than Shaquille O'Neal." It gave them a whole nother perspective. They had no idea that a man who couldn't run, shoot, didn't play anything, but who used his mind and his intellect and his
Whew.
education could make more. I think Shaquille had signed a contract for 100 million for 5 years. And when they
Mm.
saw that Chenault, I think, was making 40 million a year, he said, "We can figure that out, man. Ray
That's
Charles
right.
could see that's a better deal." But
Yes, for sure. That
so
is
this
well, yeah.
conversation will help that, man.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that young people can understand, particularly, and we always say this in sales.
Hmm.
In sales, you're part of the engine that drives any corporation. Number
Hmm.
one. Number two, if you have a successful career in sales, you can be a successful entrepreneur. In fact, I'm about to be part of a group. We're going to be teaching entrepreneurship to young people for on behalf of the 100 Black men here in the New York area. for those that want to become entrepreneurs, putting together a business plan. And really, my piece will be mindset, because
Mm,
that is so, so important. Mindset is critical to your success. You got
yes.
to believe, you got to understand, you got to be open. All the things, many of the things that we discussed today are critical to being successful.
Wow.
So, it's just my way of paying it forward.
Well, I tell you, Reggie, you have such a way of you answer the question before I ever ask it. I always ask our guests, were there any parting words you would like to share with our audience? So I'll go ahead and ask you, but I tell you, you dropped so many parting words and getting to the end that I don't know if there's any more to be said. But any parting words to our audience, my friend?
Well, the first thing, I just want to thank you for thinking enough of me to ask me to do an interview. Quite frankly, Herb, I've been asked to do several interviews and I've turned many of them down,
Mm,
partly because of who asked. So the fact that I have such a high level of respect for you makes a difference, number one. Number two, I didn't necessarily always think that I had a lot to say and a lot
mm.
to share. Because, while some people may think that, well, what, and people from outside of our culture and community may say, well, you're not like the rest of them. Well,
Uh,
I come from many of them. There are many of us out here. You just
yeah,
don't know where we are,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, there are many brothers and sisters that have contributed to my success and who look like me, who are way better than I could ever be, and some as good and some maybe not as good. So, I would certainly say that it's a blessing to be able to share this information with people. I'm glad I had the opportunity to share that. And if I said anything, and you can take one little nugget and implement it, because it doesn't mean anything to listen. You can read your book all you want, but if
Uh-huh.
you never take action, all it is a well-read book,
Yes,
right?
yes.
A dream is a dream until it becomes, yeah, until you take action. And once you take action, then it becomes reality. So I would say that anything that you felt that was useful, take action, and then you'll see the fruition of your actions.
Wow. Well, Reggie, I tell you something, man. You have I just thank you so much for sharing your information, your knowledge. I don't know if you have a website or any contact information that you'd like to share. We're happy to do that.
I don't, Herb.
Eh,
There's some things that I'm working on that
yeah.
I'm not quite ready to share. You
All
probably
right.
will learn a little bit about it, but if anyone is interested in contacting me, since they watch your channel, if they go through you and
Uh-huh.
they come and you send me a note or a text or whatever,
I got
I
it.
will promise that I will get back.
Thank you.
You've got my email, you've got my phone number, you've got all my personal information. You've got
Okay.
everything.
All right, my brother. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Today was special because today you were able to hear another side of success. We often, many of us have different attitudes about a job and working for somebody else. But I think what you've heard today is how to make the job work for you. It's really the
Yes.
difference between a job and a profession. And what Reggie has shared with us today is just amazing. And I hope it will inspire me, young people, to say, hey, you know what? I didn't understand it. Now I see. And there are a lot of us veterans who've been around a while who are now looking at another level in our lives. And it's just good to know some of those nuggets you shared with us. So thanks again for being a guest on Success Talk. Reggie Davis, the
Thank you so
man.
much.
Thank you. And
Thank
so
you,
it
Herb.
is. I always like
Absolutely.
to say, you can take these words and they will help you be what you want to be, do what you want to do, and have anything you desire, always knowing that the best is yet to come. And so
Thank
it
you.
is.
Yes.